This may be the most anticipated tent of the year.
The Durston X-Mid has quickly become one of the most popular tents among long-distance thru-hikers.
I have the Durston X-Mid too.
I have a Durston X-Mid Pro 1.
Backpackers, mainstream media, YouTube creators, and more. And just last week, Dan Durston launched a freestanding version of his popular X-Mid design called the X-Dome.
And I've got the only prototype in existence just a few short weeks before production tents start shipping out. So let's not only take a look, but put it to the test. And unfortunately, this tent is done.
First, the specs. The X-Dome is a 3-season freestanding ultralight one-person tent. It is the only tent I know of that needs 0 stakes to pitch properly thanks to its rectangular design and built-in vestibule. Unlike most tents, there is no need to stake out the vestibule, making this a true freestanding tent. But saying this tent doesn't need stakes is a bit misleading. Sure, it will stand on its own without stakes, but even the slightest breeze in your tent is gone with the wind.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
So let's say it's the only tent I know of that will pitch with as little as 4 stakes. And coming in at 2.36 pounds with 4 stakes, poles, fly, inner, and stuff sack, it is the lightest fully freestanding tent on the market, mostly because of the super light carbon fiber poles.
On any other tent, carbon fiber poles would be a premium upgrade, with some tent manufacturers charging as much as $1,800 for the luxury, but the X-Dome comes standard with carbon fiber poles and still manages to beat the competition on price.
There's only one problem.
This is only the second time that I've pitched the X-Dome, and I've already got a problem. The little metal sleeve on one of the poles is just missing.
Now, I had the exact same thing happen on my MSR Hubba Hubba earlier this year. The Hubba Hubba has cyclone poles that are not carbon fiber but are similar in look and feel. With the 2 poles being similar and experiencing the exact same problem, this might indicate a common problem. More about that in a minute. But even with lightweight poles others charge a premium for, the X-Dome manages to stay affordable at just $369, which isn't as cheap as the similarly constructed Poly X-Mids, but almost $50 cheaper than the Copper Spur and the Nemo Dragonfly.
But the thing that really separates this tent from other freestanding tents is the ability to pitch fly first without a footprint.
Now, the main reason you want this is for setting up in bad weather. In the amount of time it takes to pitch most tents, your inner tent can get soaked long before you manage to get the fly on. Some freestanding tents let you pitch fly first with the optional footprint, but the X-Dome can do it without one. Because unlike a lot of double-walled tents that pitch with the poles between the fly and the inner tent, the poles on the X-Dome are outside the fly, which allows you to simply and easily lay the fly out, attach the 4 corners, and attach the clips. This way you can pitch fly first, fly and inner together, or fly only, all without a footprint.
One of the really interesting features about this tent that really shows how it was inspired by trekking pole tents is you can actually attach a trekking pole to the center crossbar to give it more strength.
Now, most of the time this is going to be overkill, but if you're expecting a lot of wind or even an early snowfall, this extra strength could really come in handy, and it's a nice touch that nods to its trekking pole cousin.
Now, there's a lot of things on this tent that really surprised me. First and foremost, there's no X on the X-Dome.
I really expected this tent to have 2 poles going to opposite corners like an X, and was surprised that the poles have 2 Y hubs. 2 poles in an X certainly would have put the X in X-Dome, but it's not how the X-Mid got its name either. I assume the X-Mid got its name from the offset floor design, which forms sort of an X in relation to the fly, which is why I was surprised that the floor isn't completely offset like the X-Mid. It's more wedge-shaped, with 1 corner cut out to make room for the vestibule. I also expected there to be 2 doors like the X-Mid 1, even though I think 2 doors are pointless on a 1-person tent. Now, these choices were unexpected, but I think they were the right choices. It not only gives you more room for gear or whatever else you might need, but it cuts down on weight and gives you plenty of room.
One of the things I really disliked about the X-Mid 1 is just how close the walls feel, mainly due to the 2 doors. But the X-Dome feels a whole lot roomier and gives longer campers the ability to turn their bed sideways to give themselves more room. It's just not very X-like.
Now there is only one door on this tent, but it is a very, very wide door, allowing you to essentially remove a wall from this tent when you tie back the doors using the magnetic tiebacks. Another thing that I've never seen in a freestanding tent. Now, one of the main features of this tent is the strength and storm worthiness. I had plans to put this to the test, but before I even could, nature provided its own test. Okay, I've got another problem here. If you look real closely, this pole snapped again where I had the pole splice on it, or at least that's what I thought. It all started when the aluminum sleeve came loose in my backyard. The little metal sleeve is just missing. That could just be because this is a prototype tent and these poles were custom assembled by hand specifically for this prototype. It's possible that whoever assembled it just didn't put enough glue or whatever and the aluminum sleeve came loose. Dan assures me that production poles will be properly glued. But in order to continue using and filming the tent, I used a pole splice I had laying around. This splice was not intended for these poles and was really too big, but it was working until I did this. I thought it was the wind, but in reality, this action combined with the loose fitting splice was just too much for this lightweight carbon fiber. But the splice was long enough to cover both breaks, so I continued in a new location. This area turned out to be even more gusty, and I probably should have just stopped and waited, but I was wanting to see this tent in the wind, even get the trekking poles deployed to see how they fared. I went to reposition the stakes, but didn't get this stake in the ground all the way due to compacted soil. I was going to hammer it in with a rock, but before I could, the wind pulled the stake out of the ground and snapped the pole again. Well, unfortunately, I think this tent may be done. Thankfully, I got most of the shots I need for the video before it broke. Now, I don't think any of this would have happened if the aluminum sleeve hadn't come loose in the first place, or if I had a tight-fitting pole splice, or if I'd managed to get this stake driven all the way into the ground. I'm not sure any of this was the tent's fault, nor was it a design flaw. Based on my experience, carbon fiber poles do better in wind because they can flex more than aluminum poles. It's just the splice I used was putting pressure on the pole like your knee trying to break a stick. It was just too much for the carbon fiber to bear. But it does have me concerned about field repairs should your aluminum sleeve come loose like mine did. Like I said, this is the second set of carbon fiber poles that I've had this happen to. If it happens to you, are you going to be able to splice it, or are you out of luck if you're in the field? What do you think? Is this just a series of unfortunate events, or are carbon fiber poles more trouble than they're worth? Let me know down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, and do all those other things. And as always, thanks for watching. So I may have broken Dan's tent, but I've got an idea how to fix it using some old poles from a tent I no longer use.